Hey, somebody needs to clean the pantry. You already have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to the Professional Noticer.
You could say that 10,000 times and it still wouldn't be enough.
It fires me up, man.
I love it. Say it one more time.
Here, you and I will use common sense and all the wisdom we can muster to move beyond what is true and go all the way to the truth, creating measurable results for people like you and families like yours. No longer a member of the amateur ranks, I am the Professional Noticer.
But this isn't the end. No way. We're going to show this world a thing or two.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. And while our topics might seem to vary wildly at times, it is because the things you care about most are often greatly affected by the things you care about least. Therefore, we will field questions about business, spiritual issues, popular culture, and how to travel faster than the speed of gossip. My purpose here, today and with every show we do, is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life you would live if all your toughest questions were answered. The Professional Noticer is sponsored this week by Tucker ATV, the small-town business with the national reputation. Observations and answers. That's what we do here. I deliver the observations, you provide the questions. Questions are a critical component of the person you and I aspire to become. Nobody should be embarrassed to ask a question. Okay, because the person who never asks a question either knows everything or they don't know anything at all. And you know which side they usually fall upon. Always remember, the quality of your answers can only be determined by the quality of your question. This week, our question is from Joe in Scottsdale. Let's listen.
Hey, Andy. This is Joe from Scottsdale. I lead a sales team of 18. I have several millennials on my team, and they're very hard workers. But as you know, in sales, you need to be able to form relationships and communicate in person and help solve problems. I found, and even had a couple of them tell me, that they mainly communicate via email and text with their clients. When I'm in a sales meeting with them, I wind up having to take over when asked difficult questions. This is due to lack of skills, but I also feel they just gave up too quickly. I have one who I have mentored since his first day, and he's grown leaps and bounds, but still has a hard time connecting and relating. I've tried a few of your parenting tips and business tips with him, but with only an hour a day on average, it's hard to make up for 28 years lacking relationship skills. This is a generation living with their heads in their phones or computers. To be fair, I know it takes a certain personality to be a salesperson, and these young men and women seem to have that personality. They just don't want to fuss with the face-to-face time needed in sales. How can I cultivate them and help them become more comfortable in face-to-face interaction? Thank you.
Hey, Joe, that's a great question, and I hope it's cooling down for you there in Scottsdale. I was in Scottsdale a couple of years ago. It was 117. Yeah, and of course, you know what everybody said. It's a dry heat. Yeah, okay. So is my oven. You know, I mean, I don't care where you are. That is hot. But at least your sales team of 18 will work indoors. I'm sure you have great air conditioning out there. Look, I understand having a bunch of millennials on your team, and I understand. I know tons of millennials that are very hard workers too. And you say in sales you need to be able to form relationships and communicate in person and help solve problems. Now, that is true. The truth may be that you only need to be able to form relationships if you intend to have them continue as customers. You know, I tell my clients a lot of times that we're going to compete in a way that the competition doesn't even know a game is going on. And ultimately, the difference turns out to be you. Okay, everybody else is competing with price and product and problem solving. But if you can understand the real product is you, then you can always hammer the competition, because people will always do business with a buddy. You know, you say that this is a generation living with their heads in their phones or computers. Well, we didn't have that. You and I didn't have that growing up, or we might have been like that too. And if all somebody says is, you know, you're living with your head and your computer, you really got to form relationships. And if that's all we're saying, but we're not explaining to them why, what's in it for them to form a relationship. You know, it's amazing to me to see how many companies have personal growth aspects for their people, for their employees, but never really explain why it would be important to have personal growth. And people would just say, hey, read this book, you know, this will change your life. Well, all right. But if you don't explain to people how their lives will be changed and why this is the truth. Okay, see, let me see. Maybe there's a different way of saying this. A company who has a sales team that is only communicating via text and email, and they're keeping their head in the computer. A company whose sales team like that can be beaten in a heartbeat. Anybody can beat them because they're competing with price and product. And so all I got to do to take your clients is to just give them a better price. If the product's the same, all I got to do is just give them a little better price. Well, they don't have any relationship with those people. They just get emails from them. They get texts from them, you know. And so I can beat that team in a heartbeat because I can go shake their hands. You know, I can find out something about their kids. I can find out how the mama is and how the grandmama is. And if I find out that at one point grandma was in the hospital, a week later when I talk to them, before I ever talk to them about money or a new product or a new order, before I ever talk to them about that, I'm going to ask how grandma is. And is she home yet, or is she still in the hospital? And has it been hard dealing with your children, with their grandmama in the hospital? Were they scared? You know, how has that gone, man? And I will take that client from you in a heartbeat. You say in your letter, Joe, you say, it takes a certain personality to be a salesperson. I disagree with that. I think that it takes personality, but I don't think it takes a certain personality. I think it takes some personality. You can't just like sit there and email them and text them and not look them in the eye when you are in their presence and not shake their hand. But anybody who can meet somebody, who can become valuable to other people, who can talk about their family instead of yours. These are people that can be easily adapted to any sales team. And in fact, if this is understood by the entire staff, then the guy who answers the phone for everybody is just as important to the customer base and retention and new clients as the people we call salespeople. The service division is just as important as the salespeople because they can shake hands, they can ask about family, they can develop relationships. So you can cultivate them and help them be more comfortable in face-to-face interactions just by explaining to them why that works as it does. And then you'll have some results that you'll be very excited about, that you'll be bragging about. Hey, let us know how it goes, okay? Hey, our sponsor this week is our friends at Tucker ATV, Shannon and Lisa. They have Echo power tools, the Hustler turf equipment, all that, and they have Polaris, which is the Rolls-Royce of off-road vehicles. I mean, Polaris, they're just the best. Even if you're not interested in a Polaris or a Hustler lawn stuff or Echo power tools right now, I mean, there will be a time in your life you're probably going to need some of this stuff, but you need to follow them on Facebook. If you are interested in business, you need to see at Facebook. You need to look at what they have done to the inside of that place, because there are people driving way off the interstate to get to Tucker ATV just to have the opportunity to sit around, look around in that place. There is fabulous taxidermy. There are antiques. There's surprises at every corner. Your family will love it. Doesn't matter if you're an outdoor person or not. Tucker ATV, Highway 43 North in Jackson, Alabama. It's the small business with a national reputation. Okay, observations and answers. That's what we do here. Every week, I toss out a few observations, and you provide the questions. Then we harness common sense and wisdom to plow through the issue all the way to an answer for you. So here's what I'm seeing this week. My observations for this particular moment that you and I have together are about the difference in perception and perspective. A lot of times I hear that people kind of have them a little bit mixed up. I've become more excited through the years about the power of perspective than just about any other principle that I've tried to understand and tried to teach. And the reason is because I'm always learning more about this like absolutely amazing force, perspective. And yet people mistake perspective for perception. Now, here's a fact. Think carefully. You choose your perspective. And we live in a world where people seem to feel powerless. Well, wouldn't it be great if you were in control? I mean, at least of yourself, of the things that happen. And you are, or you can be, if you understand the nature of perspective. So your perspective is yours. You own it. Nobody else can change it or reduce it or add to it without your permission. You were created as a tiny baby with the ability to have free will, to choose your perspective about your life. And, while other people might see certain circumstances as like, oh, this is the end of everything. Well, you can decide, no, it's just the beginning. Have you heard people say that a person's perception is one's reality? And that's often true. Okay. However, if you are intending to live a life of great influence and a lot of rewards, personally and professionally, it's critical that you understand the difference between perception and perspective. Perception, how a situation is perceived, that has to do with what somebody decides the facts are at any given moment. Perspective, on the other hand, this has to do with what you decide the facts of that moment mean in terms of direction in your life. So perception concerns what is, but perspective concerns our ability to direct what happens from that point forward according to our interpretation of what is. I think about how many times I hear people tell me that, we're moving and, our child is in the 10th grade. And so we've made arrangements for our child to finish out, his high school years, with his friends. And I just cringe. I'm like, really? I mean, really, your child's friends are not as important as your child's family. Your child you can't really make great decisions without all the facts. And I've had people ask about this, and I say, well, you got to look at the facts. You got to look at what are you after. Remember, we're not after raising a great kid. You don't want to raise a great kid. That's not your goal. You want to raise a kid who becomes a great adult. And I have a particular thought on this thing, this thing of the kid staying there to finish out high school with his friends, because my parents moved in the middle of my senior year in high school. I mean, at the end of October in my senior year at high school in Birmingham, Alabama. I was at Berry High School, which will tell you how old I am. The school doesn't even exist anymore. But in October, my family, my dad announced we're moving to another state. Okay, now, at this point, my perception is that, man, we're leaving. And that perception was accurate. But I had a choice on perspective. I could choose that this was either going to be the worst thing in my life or this was going to be the best thing in my life. And I could choose anything in between. Now, within 24 hours, I had begun to get very excited because I thought, we're moving to another state. We're moving to a place where nobody knows me. They don't know anything about my past. I'm wearing contacts. They don't know I used to have glasses. They don't know that, my hair used to stick out straight on the sides of my head when my dad made me cut it above my ear. They didn't know any of this stuff. In fact, I knew that when we were moving to Columbus, Mississippi, I could choose whoever I was because they didn't know. And I am telling you that when I went to Lee High School, SD Lee in Columbus, Mississippi, I quickly figured out who the cool guys were. And I knew Brian Brown was the best looking guy in high school. I knew Mark McClure was, very popular, and Alan Kirby, the president of the senior class. And I just was funny, and I just kind of hung out with them, and they evidently assumed that I had always hung out with the popular people, and I was accepted into that, and as God is my witness, within a month, I was dating the best-looking girl at the private school. Or they all seemed to be great looking at that private school, but I was dating one of the best-looking girls in town, which would have been way above my pay grade back at my other school. And so what I'm saying is, if you have an opportunity that you're moving, that you're changing, that you're going to a different town, or your child, it is much more important that your child, even though it's a teenager, a young man, or a young lady, their life in the future is going to be much more greatly affected by time with their family in a positive way, anyway, than it will be in a positive way connected with young people in the absence of their parents. And I know this may be a tough thing, but if you view this as an opportunity to explain to explain the restart, it won't be as tough as you think it will. I mean, you may have to put up with a pouting teenager for a little while, but it won't be as tough. Now here's the other kind of proof I have that I have observed about perspective, is that we can, and I said before, we can choose our perspective. We choose it. And sometimes if we're not careful, even as adults, we begin to act like and live the life that other people have chosen for us. Rather than being in control, we are allowing somebody else to control. I'll give you a perfect example. Everybody remembers the movie star Jimmy Stewart. And Jimmy Stewart had a little odd tone in his voice. And so all the impressionists, Rich Little, Frank Gorshin, all the people, every impressionist did Jimmy Stewart because he was easy to do. Now, an impressionist, these guys, they're not mimics, they're impressionists, they're entertainers, they're comic entertainers. And so any impression that they do is exaggerated. So you go, yeah, he does do that. I didn't really realize he, but when they would do Jimmy Stewart, they would do this. Here we go. Harvey here. Harvey is my best friend. Harvey would like a drink here, and that's the Jimmy Stewart that they would do. But in reality, that Jimmy Stewart did not exist. Because if you watch old Jimmy Stewart movies, he didn't talk like that. I mean, there's an incredible exaggeration of how he talked. Go pull up, one of his old movies. Go pull up It's a Wonderful Life, because he had a tone in his voice. But when he was doing movies, in It's a Wonderful Life, Uncle Billy, you remember what my father was like? My father helped people. He let people get out of the slums. He helped them out of Mr. Potter's slums. Uncle Billy, my father, was no businessman. That's true, but he cared about people. That's the Jimmy Stewart that really existed. But the impressionists were doing the help me here. Now, let's skip ahead a few years. Literally, Jimmy Stewart had heard himself so much from these impressionists that if you look at the last 5 or 6 times Jimmy Stewart was ever on The Tonight Show, that's what he was. There was a time on The Tonight Show, he read a poem about his dog. And as Johnny said, okay, read it. He said, this is about my old dog, Bo. It's my dog Bo. It's a poem I wrote for you, John. See, it was very odd. Jimmy Stewart had chosen, and maybe it was unknowingly, but he had chosen his perspective, and his perspective about himself had been influenced by impressionists. Isn't that odd? Yeah, I think it's odd, but it's true. We can choose our own perspective. And so I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of the Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing what tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, smile while you talk, shake hands with the kids you meet, and make sure you have an answer to the question, is it true that cannibals don't eat clowns because they taste funny? And so until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Diet Mountain Dew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by the Marianne Tyler Movie Spoilers of America. Would you like to have the pleasure of making everyone angry before the movie starts? Just tell them how it ends. Send us your name and address, and you're in. Old Yeller, the dog dies. Turner and Hooch, the dog dies. Marley and me, the dog dies. By joining the Marianne Tyler Movie Spoilers of America, you can ruin a date night in the blink of an eye. Go ahead, reserve your place now. Tell everyone that while, yes, Titanic is a fantastic movie, the ship sinks at the end.